Every time you're in the game is an opportunity, and a lot of guys are found during opportunities like this. And so every time you're on the field, it's an opportunity to get better, and you're either putting strength or weakness on film. So, yeah, the guys that popped are going to continue to get opportunities as long as what they're doing fits into what we're trying to get done on offense and defense, and they're grading out. Sometimes you can just late in the game kind of just go off on your own and try to make plays, and you can make a play, but that's not within the discipline of what we're doing. We have to consider all those things, but yeah, the more guys grade out and the more productive the guys are and utilize the snaps, then the more they're going to play.
Second row on the aisle, Jeremy Birmingham.
I mean, sort of in that vein, what Spencer's talking about, but how do you decide in a game where it's not a talent-equated game, how much stock do you put into a performance by Julian? The problems are always there, which is something you've been saying, but then so does that mean that the positives are always there too? Or is it something where you're watching a game like that and you see 18 and 19, obviously good timing, good rhythm, all that stuff. How do you balance, hey, we did whatever we wanted against a team that probably shouldn't be on the field with us versus, hey, that's something that will translate down the road?
Yeah, I think you try to do it based on your experience of seeing things. Take the passing game, for example. I mean, the spacing, the timing, location of the ball, like all those things you're looking at to see, does this look right? Or, are we getting away with things right here? Same thing up front. How's our footwork? How's our hand placement? How's the communication? How's the pad level? How are we getting off to the second level? Are we getting movement? All those things you try to do the best you can. And you expect a very, very high level of execution. And when you don't have that, you got to figure out why that is. And so it's the same thing. You're trying to identify, is it coaching, is it scheme, or is it personnel? The best you can. I will say it's not always easy coming out of those games to identify those, but the more you watch it, the more you work at it, the more experience you get as a coach, you try to project the best you can on those things.
I know you don't want to coach players differently, but for a player like Bo at the end of the game when he gets removed from the opportunity to score a second touchdown, basically because he put the ball on the dirt, does the coaching point change? Does the way you guys coach it adjust based on what you need or expect from that player throughout the rest of the season? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, guys are going to make mistakes. The question is they learn from it. So whether it's a turnover, whether it's a missed tackle, whether it's a missed assignment, guys need to play through that, and we try to flush as many of those things as we can out in practice. That's our job. When it happens in a game, there's a reason it happened in the game. Whether we're not practicing right, we're not coaching it right, we don't have the right guy in the game. There's a reason why. Now, it's the coach's job to make sure we prepare the players, but it's the player's job to make sure that we're in that moment when a mistake is made, they learn from it. When we start to have multiple mistakes that haven't been fixed, now we really have an issue. So that's why sometimes when you have inexperienced players that haven't done it before, you hold your breath a little bit because you don't know what exactly you're going to get. Now, all that being said, that's why we practice. That's why we train to make sure that we're ready in those moments.
The punt return situation, I think last week you said that Jeremiah would continue to do some things. We didn't see him last week, obviously, the game situation. Are you comfortable with what you're seeing from Brandon back there and just comfortable with the weapon that it is or isn't right now in general?
Yeah, that's an area coming out of the game that we've got to improve on for sure. I think we lost 47 hidden yards with the ball bouncing around on the ground. Now, a couple of them were very difficult because they weren't very well hit. But other ones I feel like we could have fielded. So it's not just one thing. Brandon's still going to return punts for us, but we also have, Jeremiah that we can put back there, Carnell, Caleb if we need to. But we're going to stick to it, but we got to get better. There's no question. That's something coming out of the game that was a red flag that we got to get fixed.
Right here to the right, Council Barrett.
As you looked at the film of Julian, what jumped out? Anything surprised you? How pleased were you with what you saw?
I thought he had a good rhythm again. He started fast, which was another good sign. I think he was accurate. The ball came out on time. We pushed the ball down the field a little bit, and he was accurate with those throws down the field. Those were the things probably that jumped out. Again, a lot of things, there were guys open, and so that was good. He did his job. But, I think, you're seeing, how quick the ball comes out. He is seeing the field well. And, it was good to see him push the ball down the field as well because he does have a strong arm. And when we can stretch the field vertically, horizontally, and then run the ball, that's when we're at our best.
Fourth row middle, Patrick Murphy.
Ryan, you talked last week about Coach Hart lighting up in the box, and that before the season, you also mentioned to us like wanting to sort of stay off of Julian and let Billy talk to him. Just how through the first 2 games do you feel like you've managed it this year without Chip, Brian doing it for the first time? How's it been for you on that side?
Yeah, I think it's been good. I think we have a lot of guys in that room who have been around together. This is the first time Tyler's kind of gone through it with us. But there's a lot of familiarity with how we do things. So I think it's been good, and for Brian, he's really organizing it well now and calling it. And, Keenan has a lot of input, Tyler has a lot of input, Billy has a lot of input, Carlos has a lot of input, and then I obviously have a lot of input as well. And then try to help the best we can and organize the call sheet so that we're ready to go and we have plans in place. I think the communication so far has been clean. But again, bigger challenges ahead. We got to keep building and stay ahead of the curve. But so far, it's been solid.
We've seen Logan George yet, but he hasn't been on the availability report. Do you have anything you can update?
Yeah, we're hoping to see him play this week. So full week of practice here. He did practice last week. We held him from the game, but we're expecting him to have a full week of practice and be ready to go on Saturday.
Second row middle, Doug Lambrese.
Ryan, especially in the transfer portal world, having a veteran backup quarterback, I don't know if that feels like maybe more difficult to do than it used to do. Sometimes your backup's just a young guy on the way up. How much do you want to prioritize that maybe when you can? And just having a guy like Lincoln here, how important is that for a team?
Yeah, I think Lincoln played well. He graded out a champion. You saw him run a couple, the short yardage, and then he pulled it on the read. And so he's a good athlete. I think he made some good decisions. He threw the ball well. So he's an important part of the team, and we're going to need him. We're going to need both he and Julian this year, and we'll keep figuring out how that fits. But yeah, I think he had a good week of practice last week, and if he can piggyback the game that he had on Saturday with another really solid week here, I think that's good for the team. So we'll see what that means moving forward. But I know we're going to need him. He's he's a good leader. Guys respect him. He's a good athlete. He's a good player. So he's working hard at it, and he knows at some point he's going to get his chance. And when he does, he's got to continue to keep pushing and make the best of it. I got a lot of respect for Link, and I think that room is pretty tight.
Front row, Adam Jardy.
Ryan, did you consider taking a knee at the end before scoring the final touchdown against Grambling?
No, we were just going to keep getting better. The snaps are the snaps, the scoreboard's a scoreboard. We're not trying to, at that point, it really, the score was irrelevant. And we're not trying to ever, show anybody up or anything like that. But these guys need these reps, and that's why, we're putting them in the game is to get better. We didn't want to throw the ball down the field late in the game. I think we tried to, be respectful there. But up and through the third quarter, we were trying to, get Lincoln some reps because it's important for us. That's why we play the game. Once we got, Tavian in the game, was pretty controlled, a couple of things underneath, and we just ran it. But, it was good to see, like I told the guys, when you go in the game, like, it's okay to score. That's why you're in the game, is to score points. You're not in here to just run the game out. And so we challenge those guys to get it on film and get better. So yeah, we're just going to keep playing and try to get those guys reps.
Second row, Stephen Means.
Kind of going back to 2020 and 2021 when we're in the midst of COVID, you guys are trying to recruit, but you're doing it from your houses, not necessarily getting a chance to get on the road. I know you guys put together good classes, but how did that impact you guys' ability to maybe evaluate some guys that maybe were a little bit lesser known out there and maybe find some diamonds in the rough that you want to have in the class when you don't have the camps and all the things that you guys do in the off season?
Well, what you try to do is you try to build as many relationships as you can with people surrounding the recruits so that you can get as much information as possible. And I think the more information you have, it certainly, makes it easier to make decisions on guys, and leads to less mistakes. So the more we can do and get out and see these guys and watch them in camp and get around them, the more we learn about them. The less time we have to now rely on coaches in the area, people who, are familiar with the recruit, coaches on other teams who play against them. You got to really do your homework because that's what's most important. And it's always been important to make great decisions and evaluate, but I would say right now where we are in college football up until this point, it's the most important it's ever been. And we got to be on point with our evaluations.
Did that maybe accidentally prepare you for what you're talking about now and that evaluation part being so much more important than maybe it's ever been?
Well, I think any of those things help prepare you for when you got to make great evaluations, and a big part of that is the personnel that we have here and a big part of that is the coaches. So, in the recruiting department and the personnel department, these guys are going to go through, watch the film, give their evaluations, and then as coaches, we go on the road and, we see and get a feel for it, like live and in color. Get around the coaches, get around the teammates, get around their teachers, get around everybody to find out what type of people they are. Do they kind of fit our culture? And then hopefully get a live evaluation. Like, next week, we'll be going on the road and getting a chance to see these guys. And so, trying to make sure that matches up with the evaluations we have here with recruiting. And then it's good to have discussions and conflict and argue about things. I mean, if everyone's just saying the same thing, usually it's not good. So I think trust is important and chemistry is important to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Right next door, Bill Landis.
Ryan, what has been your assessment of Max Clare through 2 games? What have you liked? Where have you identified as areas for growth?
I think he's playing faster and faster. You watched the film the other day. I mean, he was moving around well. Didn't get as many touches, but the tight ends did. We'll keep building the package for him, but I think he's gotten much, faster and faster as he's come out of camp. Excited to see where the next couple games go.
I guess not to speak ill of where he was before, but there's just a lot of different athletes around him on this team. You always talk about young guys having to get used to the speed of the game. Is there anything even for an older guy like Max getting used to kind of having more speed around him?
I think you'd have to ask him that question, but I do think that the preseason for him was a challenge because, of the speed was one thing, but just the overall physicality of playing the tight end position where you got to block like an offensive lineman, protect like a running back, run routes like a receiver. There's just a certain level that you got to build up to when it comes to that. I think the preseason was a challenge for him, but he came out the back end and he's stronger because of it. And so, yeah, to your point, I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy for you to come right in here and match the physicality of the day-to-day when maybe, you weren't used to it. So he's becoming a better player, and I think he's going to have a big year for us.
Front row, Bill Rabinowitz.
We're only 2 games in, obviously, but what's your kind of assessment of the coordinators? Brian, you touched on Brian a little bit, and Matt. So far, so good, but are there any things that they're still adjusting to, or has it been pretty seamless?
I think the staff chemistry, I actually mentioned this to the staff today, is very good. I think everyone's working together well. I think the energy in practice has been good. I think the messaging to the players has been good. But, where we're going moving forward is going to be a big part of how we coach and what we identify. And so, we have got to fix the issues that maybe don't show up last week. And we got to project out what is the right mix of things that we're doing well, that is our foundation, but not getting into a situation where, we're getting picked on in terms of schematics and someone's got something, that they can look at and get a step ahead of. Also having enough curveballs in there that you're ahead of that, but then not doing too many new things where you can't execute anything. And that's the balance that we have to continually find. So it's very, very difficult, in my opinion, to make an assessment after 2 games. Obviously, the first game was a big challenge, but it was the first game. There's just a lot of clunkiness to that game, and it was great to get the win. But where we're going is just totally different than where we've been these first 2 games. So, a lot of work to do. We got to keep building, but that's what's exciting about this team. I think they want it. I think they have a good edge to them. I think they're growing up every day. Not everybody as fast as we want them to, but they're getting there. And the more they play, the faster they're going to grow up.
Joe Nugent.
Good.
Matt Patricia's on the sideline. I think most coordinators have been, the defense coordinator's been upstairs. What went into that decision?
That was his decision. Yeah, I left it up to him. Just get off the field on 3rd down.
Joe, go ahead.
With Riley Pettijohn named the defensive player of the game, rare for a true freshman.
Yeah.
What did you always make of that play that he had right in the hole?
Yeah, it's a sometimes I know the score was great, but it's sometimes hard to pick a player of the game in a game like that when maybe guys didn't get a ton of reps, but in a short sample of plays, he had a lot of production, so it spoke for itself. And we did what was right and gave it to him, even though he's a freshman. It's kind of rare, but it's the right thing to do. And we can't not give it to him because he's a freshman. He deserves it. And but I also know he knows is that the challenges that are coming are going to be a lot different than we faced this past week. But hey, you got to take those. This is what we were just talking about. When you have reps, and let's just say it's 15 reps, you go as hard as you possibly can. And then the more you play like that, the more you're going to get on the field. And so. This is somebody who's getting more and more action on special teams, and he's going to get more and more action at linebacker as well.
Ryan, some coaches don't love these in-state games because at least from a branding standpoint, there's a whole lot to lose, not a lot to gain, kind of from South Florida, Florida over the weekend. I know Tressel played a ton of these, Urban maybe not quite as many. What's your philosophy on Ohio State hosting the in-states?
I kind of leave that up to Ross to schedule these games, and I think it's good for the state. I think it's great for the state of Ohio. I know OU has a very proud tradition, and there's a lot of Ohio players on the roster who are going to come into the shoe and want to play really hard and play really well and win the game. So I think it's good for the state. I think it's great for their school. I think it's great for our school, and when you're from the state of Ohio, having a memory of playing in the Horseshoe during your college career is significant, and we know these guys are going to be playing with their hair on fire.
Come down to the front, Joey Kaufman.
What kind of Patrick Navarro or Parker Navarro is the type of quarterback who can move a little bit and make some throws while he's on the run, and what kind of test does he pose?
Yeah, you've watched what he's done against 2 Power 5 opponents, 1 Big Ten opponent, and he's done some really good things. He's spread the ball around. He can make plays off schedule. He's got good quickness, competitive player. But ultimately, to me, he's a winner, and did that last week. So, it's a good challenge for us.
Go up here to Cameron T. Robinson.
Ryan, after the game on Saturday, you talked about the evolution of tight ends in the offense. At what point do you remember for the last couple of years when you were looking at the roster and looking kind of foreseeing the future, where you might be able to play so much 14 personnel, or was that just a matter of you got Max out the portal, you got Will out the portal, and it just kind of evolved?
Let's just start a couple years ago when you just stay in 11. There are ways that teams schematically can defend you. If you're just exclusively one thing after a while, this is what I try to tell the coaches all the time, they're going to get you eventually. And we've been 11 around here for a long time. So the ability to jump into 12 and 13 personnel gives us something different. It's a change up. And in my opinion, when a defensive player goes from 11 to 12 to 13, back to 11 to tempo to empty, and all these different things come into play, it's harder for them to nail down exactly what you're doing. If you're always in 11, you're always in one tempo, it's a lot easier for them to kind of zero in on what you're doing. So we want to put as much stress, we've always felt that way, and as the game has evolved year in and year out, we try to stay a step ahead. And a couple years ago, we realized that the tight end position and having wide receivers that can block were critical. So to me, if you're just doing one thing, no good. You have to be able to be a tight end that can run routes or a receiver that can block. If you're just a receiver that can run routes or you're just a tight end that can block, you don't bring a lot to the table in terms of value. I'm not saying you can't play, but teams can start to narrow in on what you can do, and then they start to really dive into what they're going to get when you're in the game. So the more versatility guys have, the better.
That conversation you and Tony and maybe Keenan had about in the recruiting aspect of trying to build this room up, or is it just development guys and keep that?
A little bit of both. We knew that we wanted to, again, have these guys that had versatility, and then what you do is you take a look at what you have on the team that year, and you build it around those guys. So I think we've always wanted to utilize our tight ends, and we've had some really good tight ends that have come, but now that we probably are deeper there than we've been in the past.
We'll go right in front, to Rob Oliver.
Yeah, Ryan, you open with Texas, then 2 non-matchup games, then your idol. That seems like a really good setup to allow you to reset after you.
As long as you win the first game.
Right. How much do you map up going into the season? How much do you map up or segment out the season into like pieces?
Yeah.
And without looking too far ahead.
No, that's exactly what it is. I mean, as you could imagine, like the entire focus of August was to beat Texas. Because you look at the bye, you look at kind of the way it shakes out, like that was the focus. And then, all right, where are we going from here? What are we going to build from here? And there was install that we had during August that we were projecting out and planning and prepping and those types of things. But ultimately, like that was always right there every day. There was a part of practice that we were focused there. And so once you you get done with that game, you have to recognize, okay, what's coming next? And then, this is really what our focus is. When we take a step back, yeah, you're able to recognize some trends in the year where, you may see a little bit of a focus here, focus there. And we talk about that in the preseason, not as much obviously now. Right now, it's all on Ohio U. It's our preparation for these guys and playing well, and really trying to master our process, our practice, because this is still really only our second full game week. The first week is kind of funky because you're coming off of camp and everything. I mean, we had a week to get ready last week. We have a week to get ready this week, and each day, our Monday is significant. Our Tuesday is a bloody Tuesday. Like, this is a big day. Then we have our Wednesday, and and everything is very segmented. And so, having the discipline to master each one of those days as we play on Saturday is like kind of where we are right now. And so we gotta focus in on winning this game, and then we'll kind of figure out what's coming next. But yeah, as you can imagine, we do look at those things in kind of windows.
All right, we got time for two more. We'll go first to Steve Hellwagon.
Yeah, Coach. I think Jeremy Birmingham asked you a question a week or two ago about recruiting and just in this new landscape, the difficulty, I guess, in getting the commitment, holding on to the commitment, and at the same time seeing guys go to other schools or whatever. And I don't know if you're continuing to recruit guys. Just your thought about where this is headed and the job, I guess, that you and your staff have tried to do with this year's class.
Yeah. Well, it really comes down to, once you get to December, that's what's going to matter. You've seen now more than ever where you see guys, commit someplace, go somewhere else, and things change. So, we feel like we have some really good guys committed right now, and, we're going to make a hard push here over the next couple months to finish out the class and then figure out, what's right in the transfer portal for us. But, we feel like it's really important to make sure we have the right guys and the right fit, and our coaches are working hard towards that, and have all the confidence in the world we're going to sign a great class.
We'll wrap it up front row center.
Jeremiah Smith talked at length after the game on Saturday how bummed out he was about those drops in the first game and stuff, and right on down the line. What does that tell you about him? I mean, his work ethic, et cetera. I mean, you rave about him all the time, but the way he bounced back, so to speak, but he needed that game, even though the opponent was what it was, right?
Well, he's very, very competitive, very proud, works his tail off every day in practice. I mean, we try to pull him back, and he fights you on it because he just wants to get better every day. It's just the mindset and makeup, and he is an unbelievable example. And I think sometimes our players, I know the wide receivers probably do, and some of the guys on offense well, look at Jeremiah. Do you ever see Jeremiah do this? Do you ever see, and then after a while, I think they get tired of it, but it's because he sets the example every day. And when you have your best players who have that type of work ethic, a guy like Carnell Tate, I mean, what an example he sets for the other guys. Brandon Innes, and so your best players are the ones that are setting the tone, and that's a great sign. But when he drops a ball, it's nobody even bats an eye. I mean, certainly we're disappointed, but it's not like anybody thinks that he's not going to catch the next one. Because what we see in practice every day tells us that he's going to catch the next one. So there's never any doubt there, and we have all the confidence in the world. And that's one of the things that I try to share with the guys all the time. The harder you work in practice, and the more you do it in practice, the more confidence you have when you're on the field. If you're not doing it in practice every day, you aren't going to have confidence. Like going into a test and not being prepared. If you don't know, the material when you go into a test, yeah, you're nervous because you don't know what's going on. But if you've studied your tail off and you know exactly what's on that test, you walk in, you take it, and you walk out. It's the same way as we prepare for games, and Jeremiah is a great example of somebody that prepares really hard.
Are you a fan, by the way, of the proposed change in the transfer portal to one-time January? I mean, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, no. I don't think it's a good idea at all. In the conversations that we had with the Big Ten coaches, I think the majority of them agree. I just don't quite understand how, for teams that are playing in the playoffs are expected to, make the decisions and sign their upcoming players while they're still getting ready to play for games. It doesn't make any sense to me. I know the calendar is funky, but, I know that the Big Ten and Tony Petitti's been working hard because he doesn't believe it either, and neither do the coaches in the Big Ten. We had a lot of long discussions about that and tried to work through the different windows. but I don't agree with it being in January. Yep.